when almost everything we knew about flow was in Rise of Superman when it came out. Since that time, I now can tell you that it appears that when you drop into flow, your smile muscles become hyperactive and your frown muscles may be paralyzed. And that doesn't actually mean you're unhappy in flow, because your frown muscles are actually correlated to mental effort. And because flow is effortless effort, it doesn't produce the same signature on your face. Doesn't mean you're not burning a hell of a lot of energy in flow. You're probably burning a ton more than normally, but it doesn't register as effort. We don't read it that way.
What does it take to do the impossible? What does it take to level up your game like never before? What does it take for individuals, organizations, for even institutions to achieve paradigm shifting? Nothing is ever the same again. Breakthroughs.
Our mission is to decode the neurobiology of flow and cognitive peak performance. Access the minds of maverick scientists, groundbreaking innovators, and world-leading experts to understand what it takes to achieve ultimate human performance, so you can feel your best, perform your best, and accomplish your boldest goals. I'm your host, Rian Doris, and together with best-selling author Stephen Kotler, I present to you Flow Research Collective Radio. Hey there, Rian Doris here with Flow Research Collective Radio. Hope you are doing well. Now, in the last couple of weeks, you may have seen a lot of excitement building about Stephen's new book on peak performance, The Art of Impossible. And it's coming out really, really soon. It may have already come out. Now, this is a Turning Tables episode where Stephen is actually interviewed about The Art of Impossible, his new book by Marc Champagne, who runs the podcast Behind the Human. Marc's a friend of ours here at the Flow Research Collective. And in this interview, Stephen dives deep into how he got into flow research through action sports. He talks about how his love and passion for flow and peak performance developed from his background in punk rock. Then he goes into innovation and what's required for companies to achieve and sustain peak performance, and touches on the art of impossible in general and what he's trying to achieve by releasing that book into the world. So you're going to really love this episode. It's a treat, and Marc's a great interviewer, so you're in for a treat in that respect also. Now, before we dive in, I want to mention that The Art of Impossible is actually available to order now. If you go to theartofimpossible.com, you can pre-order the book there, and you can grab a ton of really cool bonuses for free that you can download immediately as soon as you order the book. You'll get our course on managing distraction disruptor. You'll get a masterclass in the science of goal setting, so you can lock your goals in for this coming year, and a load of other cool things like a masterclass on grit and more. So if you want to get all those bonuses, then go to theartofimpossible.com, pre-order The Art of Impossible. You're going to love it. And we will send you the bonuses immediately and the book as soon as it's out. Now enjoy today's episode with Stephen, and that's theartofimpossible.com to pre-order those bonuses.
Holy shit, the same state of consciousness that got me from seriously subpar back to normal was taking normal people up to Superman. And it was the reason that we were seeing so much heightened performance in action sports. These athletes, for reasons that would take me almost 20 years to come to really understand, had found ways to massively increase the amount of flow in their lives. And they took a state that was rare and elusive and made it commonplace. And in doing it, they pushed the level of performance faster and farther than any other group of people in history. Of course, you also have to understand, I want to pause to say it's not just action sport athletes. We now know anytime you see a culture of innovation, like a real innovation explosion, and this could be like Seattle in the grunge rock movement or Silicon Valley in the 90s when the internet was being born, right?
Sure.
You're seeing is an environment that is generating a tremendous amount of flow. And now we know why and can understand that, but for a really long time we didn't. And in Stealing Fire, we talk about how pretty much any skunk work that any company wants to build, right? These are essentially flow generating innovation structures for companies, right? They're ways for corporations to start generating a hell of a lot more flow. And, which is why Google X, their high flow skunk works, has produced 50% of the products that Google sells.
Did you notice so I was interviewing Apollo Ono yesterday actually, and he's an 8-time medalist in short track speed skating, and he must have brought up flow, probably half of the interview. It was just in conversation, and he was doing everything possible to get in those states. But like that's normal now. Like when did it transition? Because you're sitting on the outside, like you're right there, right?
Honestly, Rise of Superman.
Well, that's cool.
I don't mean to like toot my own horn or
yeah, fair.
Like honestly, it was Rise of Superman, meaning like the number of PhDs on flow shot through it because nobody knew all that work had been done. That was just, most of that. The other thing so what happened in flow research in America is in 2000, Gina Colada, who's a sports reporter for the New York Times, asked a woman named Huda Akil, who is one of the world's leading endorphin researchers and was then the head of one of the major, I can't remember which major association of neuroscientists, about runner's high. And she said, no, runner's high being caused by endorphins in the brain is a total fantasy of pop culture. It's bullshit. And she was wrong, actually, totally flat out wrong. But until 2007, we didn't know that. And what happened at that moment in time is the new age flow as a psychological term got introduced to the world in 1990 when Csikszentmihalyi published his book, published flow itself. There have been a handful of people who were working on it prior to that. And a lot of people were working on the psychology, but like that introduced it to the world. And it had about a 10-year run. And the psychology of flow is a terrible way to try to study the state or train the state. It's too complicated. You have to go to the level of neurobiology. You have to get down to mechanism. And we didn't start getting actual really good neurobiological tools till around 97, 98, right?
Okay.
So right around the time this comment was made, flow research left America. It shut down. You couldn't get funding. They were like, oh, this incredibly prominent neuroscientist says it's bullshit. It's bullshit. It left. Like the handful of flow researchers who were here, a lot of them went elsewhere, left the country. Most of the major research moved to Europe, the Karolinska Institute, Ulm University in Germany. Other than Csikszentmihalyi, who was then at Claremont, and the people he was training, a lot of it went away. But the work didn't stop. It just left America. And the new age started claiming flow for this and that and this and that. And that's even, that scares scientists more than anything else. So Rise of Superman was the first book that said, hey, wait a minute, guys, there's an entire field here. And it was bad inside the field also. So if you want to talk about neuroscience, you're really talking about 4 different things, right? Neurochemistry and neuroelectricity, which are the 2 ways the brain talks to itself and the body, and then neural anatomy, where in the brain something is taking place, and networks, because things rarely take place in one place. They're an assembly of places and they're working together. So networks, right? There were people who were working on EEG stuff, brainwaves, neuroelectricity for flow, but they never talked to the neurochemistry people. And the neurochemistry people never talked to the neural anatomy people, and nobody was talking to the network people. So I was probably the first major person to come along. I spent 20 years talking to all these different people, and combining it together. And the result was Rise of Superman. And because once that got done and people went, oh my God, here's the full body of work. Here's everything that's gone on. This is an actual field of study. Now today there are probably, we're going to pause for a second. You're going to have to cut out my dog drinking in the background, or you just,
it's all good. This is live.
Well, I apologize. He's huge and he's a pig. He's got the worst table manners known to man. He's got really bad timing.
Hydration is key. We should all realize that.
I apologize for the bad sound. Anyways, I'm not going to yell at him though. Hydration is key. So I really, it's Rise of Superman wasn't just in and of itself the catalyst. It was that there was a body of work that was being built up that was sort of celebrated and talked about in Rise of Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a huge body of work, right? And I mean, by 2013, we had fMRI scans of what flow looked like. We had really good EEG data. We started to get physiological data. I mean, to just give you an idea, so like when almost everything we knew about flow was in Rise of Superman when it came out. Since that time, I now can tell you that it appears that when you drop into flow, your smile muscles become hyperactive and your frown muscles may be paralyzed. And that doesn't actually mean you're unhappy in flow, because your frown muscles are actually correlated to mental effort. And because flow is effortless effort, it doesn't produce the same signature on your face. Doesn't mean you're not burning a hell of a lot of energy in flow. You're probably burning a ton more than normally, but it doesn't register as effort. We don't read it that way.
Interesting.
All right, I hope you're enjoying this interview with Stephen. Now, if you are eager to make 2021 your best year yet, if you want to improve your time spent in flow, the amount of your day that you're spending honed in on your highest priority tasks, totally in the zone, well then, The Art of Impossible, Stephen's new book, is a great place to start. And if you pre-order the book now, you can also claim over $1,500 in peak performance bonuses. You will get access to a masterclass on grit, goal setting, and distraction, and lots more. And of course, you'll also get access to the book itself, which is going to teach you the full stack of peak performance tools, from creativity to accelerated learning to grit and goal setting, motivation and flow. So that's theartofimpossible.com to pre-order the book, theartofimpossible.com. Now back to the show with Stephen.
Well, that probably leads into, because one question I was going to ask you. I mean, you've studied and written about the topic since the beginning, since bringing all these people in the same room, so to speak, through Rises of Superhuman. And then you've got the latest one coming out in January, The Art of Impossible, a peak performance primer. My question was going to be, what's new? Like, why write another book, right?
Yeah. Okay, so by the way, The Art of Impossible is the book that everybody has wanted me to write, and they wanted Rise of Superman to be. And so Art of Impossible, literally everything I've learned about peak human performance over 30 years of studying. I mean, what I specialize in is those moments when impossible becomes possible. Doesn't matter what field, right? I started in action sports, but I took that same question into every domain, and then I wrote books about it. Right, all my books are about, people tackling impossible challenges and how did they do it.
Yeah, I love it.
It's a huge body of work that had never been systematized before, and so basically, Art of Impossible is a giant how-to, and it's the entire cognitive peak performance landscape. And I don't think and it's the first, as far as I can tell, completely neuroscience-based approach to all of it. The book focuses predominantly on the motivation suite. So I'm using motivation as a catch-all term, right? Okay. The book focuses on motivation, learning, creativity, and flow. These are the foundational pillars of mental high performance. These are the things that get amplified by the brain and in flow, and they're also the things that you need to be really, really good at to sustain flow over time. So some of this is, some of The Art of the Possible is the first, I think, really deep how-to book about flow, right, and flow hacking. But it's also so it turns out, if you go back to the 90s and the early 2000s, flow is incredibly hard to train. Right, we know it's peak performance. We know it does all these amazing things and amplifies all these different skills that we all want. But training it from the psychology is terrible, right? If you start with biology, that's mechanism. So, for example, at the collective, right, our major flow training, 0 to Dangerous, we measure flow pre and post using the best, psychological instruments that are available, and we're seeing a 70 to 80% boost in flow. This is what happens when you train from the neuroscience. One of the things I should tell you is that boost is not sustainable for most people. So they get that boost and you can go up that high, but they can't sustain it over time. And I started asking this question almost in around 2011, which is when I really started thinking about how do you train this stuff. And I started to notice, wow, when you train up, like, for example, Navy SEALs, they don't tend to backslide. They're able to sustain those really peak levels of flow. And you would see it in certain top executives.
Okay. Because I thought it stuck around for 2-3 days or something if you're in a peak.
No, you're talking about the effects of flow. I'm talking about the ability to get a 70% increase in the amount of flow you're seeing in your life overall.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Jeez. Yeah, that's got to be challenging.
Amabla at Harvard discovered that the heightened creativity. So we know, depending on whose numbers you want to go by, and the creativity, it's technically defined as the creation of something novel and useful. But when you really look under the hood of it, there's like a million subcomponents: idea generation, problem solving, decision making, blah, 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 all the way through idea execution and risk taking and stuff like that. So every one of those things have been measured. They all seem to go through the roof in flow, but the numbers are like 400 to 700% increase in flow. It's a huge increase. And what Teresa discovered is that heightened creativity will outlast the flow state by a day, maybe two.
Okay.
It's really powerful. But what I'm saying is when you come out of zero to dangerous, you're going to be spending 70% more time in flow than you were before you took the course. The problem is it's not going to stay that high. It's going to drop, right?
I see.
Make
Okay.
it up there, it'll go back down to like 10% more or 5% more. And the question is, well, why? What's wrong, right? And the answer is, it turns out everything we know about cognitive high performance is not just designed. You can't just work on flow, or you can't just work on habits or on attention or on goals or on grit or on intrinsic motivation or on learning. They actually all have to be worked on in a very specific order, because there's nothing. So foundational principle in peak performance. Peak human performance is nothing beyond getting your biology to work for you rather than against you. Anybody tries to tell you anything else, they're lying. There's just your biology. It either works for you or it works against you. And this, by the way, is not new information. William James was writing about this at the turn of the 19th century, or the turn of the 20th century. So we know this. And the system, it's not only that your biology is designed to work in a certain way. So let me give you a really simple example. When you start any kind of peak performance training, you have to start first with a locus of control. Do you believe that you are in control of your life, or do you believe that life happens to you? Because if you believe that life happens to you, if you don't have what's known as an internal locus of control, everything else is worthless. Literally can't teach you anything. It's like having a fixed mindset. It blocks anything else, right? So you have to start with locus of control and fixed mindset. And then the very next thing you have to go to is curiosity. Curiosity is a potent intrinsic motivator. And when you can generate multiple curiosities, that's passion lives at the intersection of multiple curiosities. When you take passion and you couple it to a cause greater than yourself, that's purpose. Once you have purpose, you need autonomy, the freedom to pursue your purpose. And then you need mastery, the skills to develop to pursue your purpose. It's designed to work in a specific order. That's the biology, literally.
And you can apply this to anything. Like I'm thinking of,
and it goes all the way through. It goes, and then once you get your intrinsic motivation lined up, you need goals, and you need 3 levels of goals. You need a mission statement level, what we call massively transformative purposes. By the way, Peter coined the term. Peter and Salim Ismail coined that term when we were at Bold, and I fucking hate it because it just sounds ridiculous to me. But he coined it, so I'm going to live with it. So what I would say, you need a mission statement for your life, right? Earlier you asked me, what do you do? And I sort of chuckled because I'm like, I only do the things on my mission statement and the stuff needed to support my mission statement. Right. That's all I do.
Yeah.
And so it's a number one filter. And then you need, high hard goals, right? My mission statement, I want to write books that impact the world, right? A higher goal is I want to write a book called The Art of Impossible. That's a singular, right? And then you need clear goals, which is what's the shit I'm going to do today and what's the order I'm going to do it in to advance my higher goals.
To get it done.
Right? Blah, blah. And so it goes from there. Grit gets layered on then. And you got it. By the way, you can't start getting grit really until you start generating more flow, because nobody will train grit without flow, because it's misery without any payoff. And we're not wired for misery without payoff.
Fascinating.
So there's literally there's an entire order, and we now have the neurobiology underneath all of it. And I think so in the way that Rise of Superman gave you a full look at, pulled all of flow stuff together, The Art of Impossible does it. I mean, the biggest difference is The Art of Impossible is, a lot more of it is my actual is research that I've done, that the Flow Research Collective has done, that I've done with our colleague. You know what I mean? It's also changed a lot over the years. It's much less reporting and more, I'm the guy driving it also. So that's changed a little bit, but it's also the first comprehensive look at how flow fits into all these categories also, right? All these things play a role in flow. And when you look at what does flow amplify the most, it's motivation, learning, creativity, right? And so why would you be training up the three things that flow already amplifies? Because flow is like taking a car and driving at 150 miles an hour. And if you don't, for a long stretch period of time, right? And if it's not a solid car, it's going to blow up, right? You're going really fast. So if people do not, for example, one of the main flow triggers is the challenge skills balance, right? That basically says we get into flow most frequently when we're using our skills to the utmost. When we use our skills to the utmost, we get better at them. So if you can't learn, onboard new skills, so you can keep staying at that edge of what's possible, you can't do this work over time. And most people are not phenomenal learners. So you have you have to learn how to onboard, intellectual knowledge. You have to learn how to onboard physical skills. And then you need a whole bunch of meta skills that surround learning, that tell you if what you're learning is right or wrong. So for example, if you're not well versed in first principle thinking, the scientific method, the methodologies of investigative journalism, or some other truth filter, you have no way to quickly evaluate what you're learning. So you can't learn at the rate needed to learn and flow for a high flow lifestyle, right? The book is called The Art of Impossible. It's about how do you tackle seemingly hard challenges. And I'll give you a couple more things that I think are really important to talk about here. One, we are designed. This is one of the clearest things that we've learned over the past 25 years, is we are literally designed as a species for high, hard challenges. We're built for it. Yeah. In fact, what the research is starting to show is that if you're not using the system how it's been designed, what you get is massive amounts of anxiety and depression and things like that. All the so-called diseases of the modern world, right? The mental diseases of the modern world all come back to we're not using the system the way it was designed to be used. And it's real. I mean, we have different labels for it, but it's really, really, really clear.
And across the board, everything.
Yeah,
we're way off.
If you're not living with passion and purpose, that produces depression. Yeah. If you literally, if you start looking at the way the system is designed, you're like, oh wow. If you do it right, you get flow. If you do it wrong, you get depression and anxiety, and there are consequences of, you know what I mean? Yeah.
So there must be a whole section I'd imagine, on just flow and immunity in this book, or
the book is about mental high performance.
Okay.
Stay away from the body. I really do. It's just people love to come in through the body. They do. It's because there's pills there, or there's like, people love technologies and they love or substances. And I always laugh. And the story I always tell when somebody always asks me these questions, I was a journalist, and I covered a lot of things. And over the course of my journalism career, I was shot at on about 5 different occasions. And at no point when somebody was actually firing a weapon at me could I say, "Excuse me, sir, would you mind putting down that AR-15 for a second while I take this substance and alter my consciousness so I can dodge your bullets or use your technology or, or deploy this breathing technique?" I mean, like, are you kidding? I need psychological triggers that I can deploy anywhere at any time that can get me into a state of peak performance. Because that's, you know what I mean? And that's an example, but we've all stood outside, surprise work meeting. Holy crap, I got to pitch ahead of you know what I mean? Like, we've all done that. We've all had that situation a million times. It could be nothing more than you come back home after a long freaking day at work and you're exhausted, and your wife sits down and looks at you and goes, "Honey," and suddenly you're like, "Oh fuck, we're going here." Right? I got nothing left. And if I don't perform at my best right now, we're going to argue for the next week, and it's going to be horrible, right? Like, this is normal life. This happens all the time. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. My wife is not going to be cool if I'm like, "Honey, that's great, but I'm going to go use the transcranial magnetic stimulation device so I can shift my consciousness so I can deal with your shit." Right? Like, that doesn't, like that. No, that's not how life works. I wish, you know what I mean? Like, if life had a pause button, great. But until life has a pause button, I'm going to train people in the psychological triggers.
Totally.
High performance. And it's not that the immunology stuff isn't interesting to me, but I try to stay in my lane. What is the neurobiology of flow? How does it work in the brain? How do we get more of it? That's where I'm at. And I'm not saying there isn't a body connection. Isn't a whole lot of immunology stuff going on. It's not super interesting. And I'm super excited for somebody else to do that work, but it's not my work.
Yeah. No, I understand that. But, and it makes sense in the sense that, I mean, it all starts at the top, like kind of what you're mentioning. You can't, if someone's not, even if you're talking about diet and nutrition and exercise, like, name anything related to the body. If someone's not ready or open to see what that can do, like, it's useless, right? So I can see it. You're at the source.
Mark, let me also flat out say, we train people. I call them the positive psychology basics. There are about 6 things that positive psychology has taught us over the past 30 years that you sort of need to do. 3 groups of them work on the physical side of the equation, on your body, energy, that sort, and 3 are sort of mental hygiene kind of stuff. You've mentioned half of it, right? There's, on the energy side, you've got hydration, nutrition, sleep, and social support. Though most people don't understand why social support sits on the energy side rather than on the cognitive side. But I always say, remember the last time you got in a fight with your boyfriend or girlfriend or wife or brother, sister, take your pick. How much energy did you have the next day?
Good point.
So social support is so foundational. Chris Peterson, who's a brilliant positive psychologist at the University of Michigan, has said, you can summarize 30 years of positive psychology in a single phrase, which is other people matter. Now, by the way, I'm an extreme introvert who doesn't like people, and I resent that statement, but he's right. Yeah, he's right. I can't even argue with it on that front, right? And I want to argue with it, trust me. Social support isn't a big deal. It means like have a good 2, 3, 4 times a week, have a good conversation with somebody who loves you, if you can. Yeah. And it's the other thing to know about the social support thing, is your brain, every time you encounter any kind of problem, anything in your life, right? Like, your brain makes up, in a couple of milliseconds, makes a risk assessment. And part of that risk assessment is based on social support. Do I have to solve this problem alone? If I solve this problem alone and it goes wrong, there are people who love me who can help me fix it afterwards. All those kinds of things. The brain does that calculation in milliseconds, but impacts every decision we make. at a very deep unconscious level. So that's on that side. And, the other side of the equation is mindfulness, gratitude, and exercise. And what I always tell people on the mindfulness, gratitude, and exercise thing, they're all great tools for mental hygiene, right? They all sort of reset the nervous system. And do one a day. You either need 5-minute gratitude practice, 11 minutes of some kind of breath work, mindfulness, something, or usually 20 to 40 minutes of exercise. We want to exercise till it's quiet upstairs. You're not going for a physical goal. You're going for like that kind of global release of nitric oxide that you get when it gets quiet upstairs.
Gotcha.
About 20 minutes in. And on the physical side, on the energy side, right? Social support, sleep. We all need 7 to 8 hours a night. And nutrition hydration is quite simply the idea that peak performance demands a lot of fuel. So yeah, we can't correlate this or that food to flow, and there's certainly no diets. Everybody's diet is individual, right? There's no flow diet for anybody or anything like that. That's absurd. But, healthy eating matters, right? Like Mediterranean diets over time, we sort of evolved for them. It seems like that's a good place to start as your baseline, and then just run the experiments on yourself. But on the mental side, on the energy side, I say, look, you can sort of screw up one of those a day, but you can't really, if you didn't get enough sleep, you're going to be able to perform at your best, provided you've got some social support and you've gotten good hydration and nutrition, right?
Yeah.
But if you screw up hydration and nutrition, but you got plenty of sleep and you can screw it. And during times of crises, no, I don't think you could screw any of those up, right? Like
that's where everyone gets wrong, I find, right?
Yeah.
Like that's when everything goes off the rails. It's like, oh no, I'm too stressed, I can't do this. And like, shit, this is exactly when you need this stuff.
You have to double down on that stuff then, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing on the, one a day on the other side, right? On the mental stuff, but during times of crisis, 2 a day.
Yeah.
Right. Or during COVID, COVID was the only time in my life I was reliably doing a gratitude practice, a mindfulness practice, and getting large amounts of exercise every day, no matter what, for the first 2 months of the lockdown. You know what I mean? Just to stay clean.
So are you I want to be conscious of your time. So maybe one of the last questions, but for you then personally, what are you doing to audit your days and weeks? Is it more of you've got time blocks for these things, and depending on what's coming up right now, let's say in the morning, you'll jump into something.
My day is really I literally my day is very extremely regimented.
Okay.
And it changes during ski season, but when it's not ski season and I'm not traveling to give a speech, I wake up at 4:00 in the morning. I write from 4 a.m. till 8 a.m. From 8 till 9, I put on a heavy weight vest and I hike my dog up a mountain behind my house. I come back, I eat, and then the next hour and a half is usually spent on either a second writing project. So all first 4 hours are always about my book.
Okay.
Maybe the book needs more love, and it'll get that second section. Or oftentimes that's when I'll do work for the Flow Research Collective. We'll have a lot of meetings during that period. And the afternoons I'll do. I take a nap every day for 20 to 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Eat lunch. And then I'll write until about 4:00, and I'll either go to the gym or I'll sit down and read neuroscience for a couple hours, and then I'm done.
Love it. It's great. It's good. I think I asked that question just because everyone's different, obviously, right? And I just want to give people ideas of what you can do. As first-time author on this side, I'm writing my first book. I'm glad to know that I'm doing the early morning writing like yourself. So that's probably a good sign. But that's helpful, super helpful. And even more so in times of high stress and whatnot, to be conscious of the fact that we need more of these types of practices, right? That's good. It's a good reminder. The last question for you: what makes you smile each day?
My dogs.
If what you've heard on Flow Research Collective Radio has been helpful, please consider doing us a solid and leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening to this. Reviews help us connect to a wider audience so we can get these peak performance principles out to more people.